A judge has dismissed a lawsuit against the Secretary of State's office that sought to invalidate state election rules. Now, the suit focused on drop boxes, absentee ballots, and signature matching for Georgia's Senate races. Liza Lucas is at the 11 Alive Bridge with more on this case.
Fran, here we are, another lawsuit to talk about. This one filed by a group of Georgia Republicans that, as you mentioned, targets the use of drop boxes as well as the ability of counties to start processing absentee ballots ahead of Election Day. Now, these are policies that were enacted by Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger earlier this year due to the pandemic and the expectation of an unprecedented amount of absentee ballots. The lawsuit challenging that such ballot policies where counties can start opening envelopes and scanning ahead of time, even though tabulation cannot start until close of polls. The groups called on the courts to block this policy, the use of drop boxes, and roll back signature review guidance, arguing such rules conflict with Georgia law and could lead to voter fraud. Georgia election officials have repeatedly said there is no evidence of widespread fraud. Now, the judge again rejected this suit, and that was reportedly on the grounds that the court should not make changes to election rules so close to an election because it could lead to voter confusion and problems with election workers as well. In the meantime, you may remember we have talked about before that Georgia Republicans, they have promised to draft legislation that could potentially prohibit the use of drop boxes going forward, as well as make signature matching even more stringent.